enjoying the coffee out there, as I would be too. And since we can't bring it in here, it's unfortunate, but also cleanly. Lunch will be served probably, I'm going to connect with the caterer very soon. Lunch will be out there afternoon. I'm really hoping your gut's not killing you yet. You had a few of those fancy pastries that have 0 calories, and it will tie you over for about 30 minutes for Paul's spectacular perspective. I met Paul completely by Russian roulette chance, and if I may say, the Russians are in this picture all over again. I was lucky enough to meet him on a data center project that we were discussing. Paul has a tremendous amount of background in the IT industry, I would say globally. He's well recognized, ex-president and CEO of Mitel for over a decade. And I have to say this about Paul. Paul has never missed his numbers. However he's done it, I have no idea, but it's magic. I think his numbers are just to be able to do that itself is quite an amazing feat in your business industry. Paul's going to talk about the crown in the cloud. I have no idea what just happened there. I think somebody's got the remote in hand. Not you. No, that's no screensaver. But and the challenges of procurement. We had a little bit of chat about this in the challenge of Crown setting up procurement policies and current procurement policies under Treasury Board or wherever it might be. And why is it that when the Crown goes to Paul and says, "Hey, Paul, you run this company called HostedBizz and you offer cloud services. Would you mind bidding on this?" And Paul just says, "No, thanks." Why? And I think that's a really compelling story here that Paul's going to share. So please help me welcome Paul up here, and let's see what he has to say.
I'm going to stand here because I got Survivor's dance. I don't be here.
Oh, God.
I'll be edging around. So I understand this. I think this is going to be a bit of a tangent from what we've discussed so far. So, talking to a number of people outside, there's clearly a lot of federal employees here, a lot of people, running data centers or planning on building them. And when I was talking to Neil, he invited me to speak, and I said, "Well, I'm on the outside in." He says, "Well, exactly. So why don't you talk about that?" So that's really what I'm going to do. Is obviously I'm running a private business, and we're a cloud-based business, and when I think about it, when I look at the interaction we have with our customers, how does that differ for the interaction with the Crown, and what would the Crown do about it? And I don't have any of those answers, but I think there's some big hurdles in the Canadian government and procuring cloud services. So I just really wanted to touch on that. So what I wanted to do really is talk about cloud table stakes, and it's good to think about these things commercially. So what is happening to the generic cloud market, and I'll talk about that to some degree. I'm going to talk about the cloud procurement challenge. I think it's a very difficult service to buy, particularly for any public entity. I think it's very difficult. It's unlike anything else. So I think it comes with a whole set of challenges, and just talk about what I would do if I was king for the day, and about cloud services. So just HostedBizz, Neil touched on it, started this company in 2012. We're a broad portfolio of cloud services. We sell about 90% of our revenues come from Canada, so we play the data sovereignty card very hard. We guarantee all of our customers' data never leaves Canada. And we do a small amount of business in Europe, and the reason we do a small amount of business in Europe is I'm a massive Chelsea supporter, and I've got to find a way to get back to watch the mighty Blues. So I left England in 1999 to become President and Chief Operating Officer of Mitel. Moved to Canada, moved my family to Canada, and I've kept my Chelsea season tickets. Not the most cost-effective thing, but we do get to take in 2 or 3 of the games. I was also formerly president of Maplesoft Group. So Maplesoft Group here in Ottawa, 90% of their revenues come from federal and crown corporations. And then in 2012, I co-founded HostedBizz with my business partner. So that's an introduction. So why are people moving to the cloud, and how fast are they moving to the cloud? So if you look at this chart, this is the generic IT market for North America. Cloud business has grown at 16.5% per year. And it's broken out here into some of the higher growth parts of that cloud industry. So software as a service, these are services like Oracle Online, these are services like Salesforce.com, growing at 21%. Platform as a service, this is where you've got a SQL server or some other application, telephony running in the cloud, growing even faster. Infrastructure as a service, which is really most of what hosted business is. So this is where we've got cloud infrastructure that our customers are subscribing to compute in the cloud. And then disaster recovery as a service. So now it's incredibly cost effective to use a cloud as your hot standby from the existing infrastructure that you have. And that's the fastest growing market for cloud services. And why are people doing this? Well, they're doing it because it's cost effective, you avoid large capital outlays, you can scale up and down. I'm going to talk about that elasticity because I think that's the biggest advantage of cloud services in general. It gives you flexibility, your users can control what they consume, you can turn it on and off. You get readily trained technical support, you're subscribing to these services. The service provider have people that are technically capable of supporting you. So you don't have to go through that training exercise yourselves. Speed of deployment and customizing, these services can be consumed almost immediately. Easier patch and management, all of these things. So this is what people are buying into. So this is why the cloud market is growing so fast, because in the old world of racking up your own tin, doing these things was very, very expensive. So why is it so difficult to purchase cloud services? And again, this is, these are my opinions. They're not underwritten by anybody else. But when I think about typical contractual terms, very, very common to have fixed length terms. Very, very common to have minimum volume commitments. Both for the Crown being asked for minimum volume commitments, and also trying to get better pricing by putting these volume thresholds, and fixed pricing. So you want a fixed pricing over the length of the term, and these are classic procurement things. Nothing wrong with it. And I think if you were buying, office chairs, this model might work very well. But for cloud computing, it really doesn't work very well because the consequence of those things for a cloud service is it's very difficult to cancel or take recourse for non-performance. And there's always lots of nightmares about vendors getting into big discussions about recourse, non-delivery, projects running late, and so on. And you just can't cancel because of the way the contracts are set up. Cloud resources, because of the minimum volume commitment, cloud resources are over-provisioned and are sitting idle. So you're paying for services that you're just not using. It just doesn't make sense in a cloud world. And pricing doesn't remain competitive. If you've got a long-term fixed contract for cloud pricing, the cloud pricing market, the prices continue to fall very, very rapidly. So why do you want to set yourself into a 5-year term? So what to do about it? So how to address those? So this is what I would do: no contract terms, hop off. Hop on, hop off. This is what our commercial customers do. They need incremental resource. They subscribe to the service. They turn up the resource. They use it for the 6 weeks they need it, or whatever it is. They hop off. That's it. Great. So we've delivered, functionality and services that they need, and they're not contractually bound. They've used. They're happy, and they've left until next time. No minimums. Flex resources up and down. So the thing that is the most powerful thing about cloud is this flexibility to flex up almost infinitely, and equally the ability to flex down. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the case examples that really leverage this total elasticity of cloud computing. And the other thing we did is when we started the company, I think it is my Mitel heritage. I've always been a bit anti-telco. And you know, when I ever call Rogers or Bell from home and I get this massive frustration, you know, you're always at the point where you want to cancel everything, and then you get put through to somebody and they halve your price and you're best friends again. It's a ridiculous way to do business. So one of the things we did when we started the company is our costs continue to fall. We pass on those cost reductions totally unannounced to our customers because that's what the market's doing. So we want to be permanently at the market. And it's very difficult to do that with a long-term procurement, obviously. So what are the things that we've seen? We've seen very punitive terms and conditions, particularly from the Crown. We've seen also massive, the barrier to entry to become accredited is very, very high as well. And again, I don't think these models work well in a cloud environment. So what happens is I've seen this over and over the years as in the IT industry. Big companies refuse to accept terms and conditions, and then a reseller steps in and accepts the terms and conditions. Well, if you've got one of your terms and conditions is, I don't know, your ability to sue the organization for several $1 million. Well, that's great if you're picking on HP or IBM or Oracle, but if they're not standing up to those terms and conditions and a reseller is, and their revenues are $10 million a year, well, how are you going to collect anyway? So, some of these terms I've always found quite strange. The other thing about accreditation, particularly for cloud, is that the government's current cloud-first approach instantly excludes about 90% of cloud vendors. And when I look at that, when I look at the bid documents that come out, the first thing I need to do is get certified to some third-party company. Audit fees alone, $175,000. So you know what? I'm not going to spend $175,000. So instantly, 90% of the market is just ignored, which I think is wrong, and I don't think that represents good value to the Crown. So the consequence then is the way to deal with these is have very, very strong SLAs with commercial recourse. We offer very strong SLAs to our customers. We offer 4.9 performance, sometimes 5 nines. And if we don't meet that, we give massive credit returns to our customers, and because we're very, very comfortable that we will meet those terms. And it's a way better to be that way than be punitive. And if you reduce the accreditation or the hurdle to participate, then I think that the Crown has got far more options of where to place their business, and you're going to always find the best provider. It's the best fit for what it is that you're trying to do, and I don't think that exists today. So I thought I'd show you, to try and underline what I'm saying here. There's a couple of case studies here. So we have a couple of customers that do flexible training running in our cloud. These customers offer online training. The customer deploys sets of servers for each student. So this is typically IT training. They'll set up 2 or 3 servers per student. They run those classes for 4 days. The instructor turns the machines off at night because he's then not paying for the compute, he's just paying for the storage. And the customers bill for the active compute at the end of every month. And when I look at these bills that go out, they're really not very material. And when I look at the technology that we're delivering to that customer to deliver that training, it's absolutely massive. And to do this any other way would be very, very difficult. These guys would have to rack up massive amounts of hardware, and it would be sitting there idle for the majority of the month. So again, a good demonstration of elasticity. Another example, we have a number of customers doing software emulation on our cloud. So they've got customers with very compute-intensive simulation software. They load it up onto our cloud. They light up very, very large machines. They run these software emulation tools for a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, however long it takes. And they're absolutely pinning CPU and RAM horsepower. And then once that emulation is complete, they just turn it all off. And again, those customers are being billed for the consumption of compute for the period that they're doing that emulation. Is very, very cost effective. Another example we're seeing massive appetite for is sandbox training. So let's say you've got a customer, or sandbox used to testing, sorry. So if you've got a customer that's using an ERP system and they want to upgrade the ERP system, but they don't want to do that in a production environment, we can create a mirror image of the ERP machines that they're using, put them in our cloud, do the software update in our cloud, do all the testing, turn them off. So again, this ability to hop on and hop off is really I think the key differentiator for cloud computing. So the other thing is, you can always go to the big guys. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Microsoft Azure. You can go to Google Cloud. So the challenge then is if you go to these people, you're going to for sure you can source compute. You can source it in a very elastic way. But what you're not going to get is you're not going to get some things that are just a little bit strange. So we have customers that are using our cloud, but they also want some co-location in our cloud. They might have a unique piece of hardware that they want to nail up that's in front of the cloud infrastructure we're providing to them. It might be a WAN accelerator, it might be a firewalls, could be email filter hardware, could be anything. And what we can do is we can deliver this hybrid cloud ability, and it's very difficult for a hyperscale provider to do that. And again, out of interest, what we do is exactly the same. So we're billing the customer for cloud consumption, and then if they're taking up space in our racks, we're billing them for that space usage. Another example is DR services. So DR services is a very material part of our business. So we're creating bare metal images of the customer servers in our cloud, and if they ever want to restore those, we can then restore those images into our cloud infrastructure. And that whole DR planning, that whole restoration process, that whole testing, setting up networking, setting up replacement DNS servers, all of that is a professional service that we can deliver that again is very difficult to source from a hyper scale cloud provider. And then the other thing is we can do customized support. So a lot of customers we'll light up servers for them, and then they load their own OS on those machines, whatever they want to do. Other customers, we're lighting up machines, and we're managing the OS for them, we're patching the OS. And really it's that the way that our customers can engage with us is really down to what the customer, where that customer wants to draw the line between our responsibility and the customer's responsibility. And there were a lot of talk about specifications today, and I think understanding the best place to draw that line is pretty critical in sourcing cloud services as well. So what's at stake? So Neil said to me, well, it's great, but how much money is at stake? How much money is being wasted? And it's quite a difficult question to answer, but I did quite a lot of searching around the internet trying to find some government pricing, if you like, and I found, it's in the UK, admittedly it's in the UK, but I found a government published document about what they're paying for cloud services. And this is UK, but I would think it's very, very similar here. So in terms of sourcing elastic cloud, when I look at the contract terms in the UK that have been entered into, and I look at the market pricing, it's 42% cheaper. Well, that's quite a big number. So it's not 10%, it's 42% cheaper. And then if I look at other things as well, if I look at disaster recovery as a service, so this is clearly a very cloud storage optimized solution. That difference is even bigger, 58% cheaper. So I think it's one thing if it's 5%, if it's 10%. When it's 58% cheaper, it's these are very, very material numbers. And then in terms of ongoing support, about half the price. So I think there's a real opportunity to for people to get their pencils sharpened and be a lot more competitive. And again, these numbers are from the UK Gov cloud computing costs. Which are published publicly, so that's how I've done that comparison. And to be honest, I pulled this together in the last 3 or 4 days, and I was quite shocked at that differential. I expected it to be 10-20%. So it's I think if Yeah, if I had the opportunity to buy something for half what I'm paying for at the moment, I'd be out there doing that. So I'm going to wrap up. So we're under instruction. I'm standing between you and lunch. What would I do about it? I don't think this problem is very simple to solve. I think it's very, very complicated. But what I would do is I would be a lot less generic about the accreditation process that the Crown is currently asking for. I would create a security requirement document, because at the end of the day, when you're using the cloud, and I'm not here suggesting that we're going to replace any military data or anything, obviously. But when you look across the broad spectrum of where the cloud could be useful, there's massive pockets for transportation or agriculture or so on, where that the sovereignty of the data is important, and it obviously needs to be protected, but it's not national mission critical, if you like. I would be creating security measures depending on the type of data that I want to put in the cloud. So that would be the first thing I would do. You've got to find a way to draw a bar when more than 3 vendors are responding. Because if 3 vendors are responding, that's why you're getting cloud pricing at twice market price. What I would then do is I see a lot of documentation from the Crown in the past telling people how to run the service that they're delivering. Well, in a cloud world, we'll run it and we'll commit to SLAs and performance metrics, but we'll run it in the way that we think is best. So we'll run it, we'll optimize it, we'll make sure it's reliable, we'll make sure we're responsive, all of those things that can be measured, but then we're responsible for how to do that. We don't have to have this person certified to this Microsoft certificate. We'll do whatever it takes to deliver that service to our customers. I think that's another key procurement challenge that I think people face. And then the final thing is around data management. So I alluded to this earlier. So you've got to decide of all the data across the Crown, where you want to put that data, or where you're comfortable putting that data, because obviously you're not going to treat all of that data all of the same way, because it'd be unaffordable. So you really need to create these buckets of services that you want to source for the different type of data and the different type of computing workloads for each of those things. And I think if you did those 3 things, then I think you'd be massively further ahead than where you are today. So with that, it felt like a bit of a rant. Did it come over? I hope it didn't come over as a rant. That's not my intention.
Good British style.
It's good British style, yeah. Well, if you've got another 20 minutes, we can talk about British politics. We'll take it.
That's another whole complicated issue.
That's it.
Thank you, Paul. So some of you may have some questions for Paul.
They're setting up lunch outside, so going outside is only going to let you stretch your legs a little bit. I told them to slow down because there's no sense having food sitting out there when no one can eat it. So I really want you to ask some questions with Paul. Paul's got some amazing background in the concept of making the dollars work around your business plan, your business idea. And I think that's what he's shedding light on at the end of the day. Maybe not, blaming is not the right term, or saying bad, but it's more, absolutely, just like the previous topic on cyber as a domain of war is absolutely thought-provoking. It may not be the right answer as in presented saying, do this. Paul's saying, maybe I do that, maybe I do this. He's not saying that certainty those are answers, but compared to what we're doing today, if we were to say, well, it's not really working super well, everyone who's dealt with procurement in the government, whether on the receiving end or the delivery end of it, can honestly say that it's complex, challenging, and not always working out. Can say that, okay, let's say that would probably do good with change, but at the same time, if Paul's presenting a case over here, maybe we need to meet somewhere in between here, depending on certain cases, and Paul's just presenting a perspective to say, hey, let's put that out there to make us think. And I think your presentation, again, very, very thoughtful in the concepts and the ideas. The elasticity of the cloud, I think, is something that companies benefit from, but definitely I think the government has challenges procuring that. So any questions for Paul? Even if it's maybe like a Mitel call? I'm just kidding. Hang on.
Thank you. Hi, Paul. The question I had for you was, quite a lot of the customers that I've been working with over the last couple of years are looking at cloud in one shape or another, whether it's DR to the cloud, standing up test environments in the cloud. More and more, I'm seeing customers wanting to migrate entire environments to the cloud from on-premise. Right now, it's fairly well understood and established that you can move a VM from on-prem to the cloud pretty easily. You can move databases to the cloud fairly easily. Moving an entire environment and workload into the cloud is a little harder to do. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you approach those challenges when customers talk to you about some of the anxieties and the nervousness around doing so?
It's a very good question. I think very valid points. We have, it's interesting when you I don't know how many customers. I think we have 3,000 customers, 3,500 customers.
Can I just? You're looking orange and really jaundiced. Can you? That's because I've not had no lunch.
So when I look at those customers, we've got lots of customers that have certain workloads in our cloud because they like the elasticity, or their on-premise hardware was getting old and they needed more horsepower and so on. And they'd be running ERP, they'd be running email, accounting, those type of workloads, and they've still got stuff on-premise. And then we've got a large number of other customers that just say, you know what, we're going to move it all. And I think you can do that. It needs a lot of planning. And one of the things you can do with the cloud, of course, is you can do all of that work, and you can get all of those workloads running in the cloud for testing purposes in parallel with the production environment on-premise. So that's certainly what we would always recommend. And then the final trigger is moving IP addresses over, and VLANs and VPNs. That's the last thing that's done at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and then away you go. But I think the benefit a company like us could have, and again, this isn't unique to us, but we've done it so many times, we've seen what works well and what doesn't, and we've got customers that come to us with very poor plans, and we talk them around basically, because it's mission critical. Like that customer doesn't want to be on a Monday morning with no computer.
Those problems arise in the government as well. I mean, if you can't, we used this example in the past when we got the CRA with their move plan for their data center to super secret site that was published in a newspaper here in Ottawa.
It's too noisy.
It's buzzing like as if it's going to boom or something, back to bombs. But the concept of what will happen, what's the impact of that? What's the financial impact of that? So let's say, for example, we can't print EI checks for some reason.
Yep.
Okay, that sucks. But the outcome is political. Are you willing to tell your deputy minister to tell your minister to then who will tell the prime minister that, hey, you know what, you're going to suffer on some votes in this region because we can't print EI checks. Don't worry. Yep. And okay, your data's protected. B, it's not as important as the classified stuff in terms of that materialistic financial outcome to the country in terms of national interest. Yeah, but that really sucks. And political outcomes will drive that. And what's the value? So I think your concept of applying the security as needed, yep, and applying it, and in a sense saying, you know what, give me your basic your actual requirements for security, but maybe not necessarily the technological requirements, and leave that to me to manage in that sense of...
Right, and don't forget, you can in the cloud create your own disaster recovery as well.
100%, yeah.
So, we have 3 data centers, and those customers that have critical workloads in our data center that are really worried about our data center going down for any inexplicable reason, we are replicating that resource in another data center, and we'll light that other data center up in a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
And Paul, just out of curiosity, when was the last time you went to that data center?
I don't do that. I have people, I go there, it's noisy, it's cold, I don't.
People from the UK, seriously. Just kidding. Any other questions for Paul while we're barking out loud? Oh, we got one over here. Sorry, go ahead.
Excellent, here we go.
Thank you. I just want to get your perspective on the business case. So Elastic Cloud, 42%, I think it was 42% savings. It makes sense to me. You're turning up, you're turning down, you're only paying for what you use. But what about clients that are moving to the point that was just asked earlier, their operation, everything into the cloud? You're taking care of the maintenance, you're taking care of the upgrades, the changes, and so on. Does the business case still make sense financially? Like, does it still hold, or is the solution, the cloud services solution, more expensive than if they operated, ran everything on, continued to do that themselves?
Okay. Again, very good question. You can hear me without a mic? You good? So, what I would say to that is if you've got a customer that's a 200, let's say it's a 200 employee company, and they're thinking about moving to the cloud, then what you can do with the cloud. So the first thing I would say is no 200 employee company is going to have the redundancy of IT infrastructure that we're providing from our cloud. That's the first thing. They're not getting redundant power, redundant 5 different ISPs, redundant cooling. We're replacing something that might be in a lab or in a closet or anything. So that's the first thing. So you have to understand the customer's getting something massively more rugged than what they've got. That's the first point. The second thing that we see is that for customers a little harder is that their infrastructure IT staff might become casualties of moving to the cloud. Right, so that's just how it is, and that's great. We just hire them and they can manage our stuff, so that's great. But that's the other thing, so that's a cost saving. And then the third thing that generally happens is people migrate totally to the cloud when there's a compelling event to do so. So they'll either be looking at a hardware refresh of their infrastructure, they'll either be moving to, Microsoft Office 365, so all of those Exchange servers they previously had they don't need anymore, but they've still got all this other stuff. So why don't we do that? And then the second step is we'll move all this other stuff to the cloud. So really it's those things and then no capital. We can do this literally in 24 hours. Those are all things that are massively compelling. So I don't think it's a single thing. I think it's a summary of all of those things.
Well, you touched on the technology side of it. I think the process side of it as well, the maturity of the process of the companies are certainly not going to be there as much as some of the service providers like yourself have already built up in order to deliver the services.
And again, because all we do is cloud, we also become quite experienced at moving workloads. So we can take Amazon workloads and repatriate it into Canada, running on our in one of our locations. And we've got a lot of experience moving from Rackspace, Amazon, whatever. So a lot of people doing that as well.
All right, Donna, go ahead. Hang on.
I'll just try to speak loud. So how big is your organization? How many full-time employees do you have? How many contractors do you have?
So so the company is 4.5 years old. We currently have 24 staff.
You just bought out another company too.
Just bought a company in January. So we have 24 staff. I would say 16 of them are technical. So overhead. Bit of overhead in there. So we don't have any contractors. I don't want to use contractors when you think about the sensitivity of some of the information we have. So all of our staff, we do screen all our staff, and we're hiring a person a month, I would say, at this point in time.
You also leverage an arm of IT from other companies.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's not all about the staff; it's more about that risk.
Yeah. So again, they're not our data centers, right? So we have assets in 2 Rogers data centers and 1 Telus data center. And of course, what we're sourcing is massive redundant infrastructure from those data centers, which a lot of people in this room would understand. And it's expensive for us, but we've always gone for the maximum certification that's available on the market, because we take that uptime very, very seriously. Because frankly, if our cloud is down, it's never happened. But I just can't imagine how dreadful that day in the office would be.
What was that financial thing that you said? You tell your clients if it's, please share the 30% thing?
Yeah, so so if we're down for 1% a month, we give a 30% rebate to our customers.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's how guaranteed, that's how comfortable you are to say uptime is guaranteed all the time. I think it's fantastic, you know, that skin in the game perspective that we're looking for in triple P projects or other side of things in construction sites. To be able to bring that down, the skin in the game and the cost of operating a business and losing business all together, that's really.
Well, and I think the other thing that's interesting, you know, back to the elasticity, our smallest customer is probably $15 a month, our largest customer is probably $60,000 a month. So it doesn't matter. Like you get this massively redundant enterprise grade IT infrastructure if you're a florist or whether you're a large development company.
And I think the challenge with the procurement process, at least from where I stand, I mean, we may not be leveraging all the valuable procurement opportunities that the federal government has when they lay out a procurement opportunity, let's say, for example, an RFP related to cloud that is able to leverage that in the sense that you'll be paying for it even if you're not using it in the crown space,
Yeah, for sure,
which doesn't make it competitive at all. This concept of saying, let's add a data center, and day one I'll be moving in with half a megawatt of floor space that I require and power consumption. But over time I'm going to grow to 3 meg, and then maybe over time I anticipate to diminish and grow and diminish and grow. I want to be charged for the consumption of service, not the whole facility. And those concepts are really complex in the procurement process.
Yeah.
It's a utility.
Yeah, it is a utility. It's a very good way to look at it.
Ken, did you want to ask a question?
I was going to ask what kind of a protocol you have for your end-of-life disposal of your servers and other information processing equipment.
It's, again, a very good question. So we take the data management very seriously for obvious reasons. We have customers that will be doing backups to us, and they might have a 7-year retention plan, and then they change their mind and say, I only want to keep a year. And we might have 2 years worth of retention, so we destroy that data. So we scrub those images and make sure they're gone. When we never sell our old computer assets, so we always delete the data and then we physically destroy all the computer assets as well.
And you'll take on other, I know you mentioned this to me in dinner one day, that you'll take on any other corporation or agency's destruction requirements, expectations.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. So as an example, for one customer that moved totally to the cloud, we facilitated the destruction of their own assets, which is good for us because that means they're never coming back.
All right, any others? Are we all starving for food? Oh, you do. Mary, please, go ahead.
So during the presentation, you talked about accreditation and how it impacts the smaller cloud companies. One of the purposes of accreditation is to make sure we get exactly some guarantees of different aspects of procurement. Since we're excluding the 90%, how do you weigh that? Because the reasons the government uses it and other companies use it relative to where you guys are in the cloud. There's got to be some happy medium, but I'm having a hard time figuring out how that is.
Well, so in the Canadian government's position, I think it's just an easy option to look down a list of potential accreditations, take an incredibly stringent one, and say, must meet that. And that's the process. So it's just instantly precluding. So when I look at all of the people that have responded, they're all agents of hyperscale cloud vendors, and they're agents. So you can qualify as a two-man shop agent, but we can't qualify unless I spend $175,000. I'm just not competitive. And we don't see that demand from other customers. I guess if I saw it from other customers, I'd spend $175,000. But we don't, and I think it's literally, let's pick a really tough accreditation. And maybe one of the 3 hyperscale vendors told them, this accreditation is really important to you. Evan. I'm going back to rant.
All right, well, as difficult as it is to get Paul's time at any moment, being our local celebrity that you are.
Well, and home games for Chelsea.
That's right, home games for Chelsea, that's true. I thank you profusely for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on how we might be able to shape the future. Thank you so much. Thank you. And when we come back, I'll squeeze in this, and then we'll squeeze in Andy. And Andy's got a tremendous set of pictures and an amazing story that captivated me just over the phone, let alone in person. Unfortunately, and fortunately in both cases, he is not able to disclose which company, oil gas organization he works for, but I will make a kind request that you do the same in terms of media attention to that, because this is a one-time opportunity. I would say the only time that I'm aware of that someone's publicly speaking about the challenges they faced and what actually got done and what didn't get done at some, if not all, or one of the organizations out there. There you go, I just kind of did peppering. Of the organizations out there that would align with probably, I would say, Canada's worst natural disaster. So there you go. Hopefully you'll come back and you'll stay. And if not, I'm going to have an intimate session with Andy.